Hello and welcome to round one with Enduring Ideal. We are on the play, which is always nice with a kind of out there deck in Modern. Just like having the initiative and not just being under the clock of a super fast kill is always important. That's like one of the big things is a lot of the existing Modern decks have been uh, tuned to be able to break serve, and if you're willing to concede being on the play, it's great. So we scried to a land. This hand was a pretty easy keep. We've got interaction, some stuff that does things against random stuff. We just need lands and then eventually a threat. But once we have one land, we can actually get to a bunch of mana with this Nykthos. So we're getting Goblin Guided. We get our free card off the land. And we have our first decision of the game. So we're obviously, get to play multiple spells. We can either play Porphyry Nodes and take the attack, or we can path the Goblin Guide on attack. And I think the answer is you just want to preserve life total here. So we're going to start establishing removal and lock for random creatures. I don't want to wait a turn and take damage off the creature that I could have nodesed. So I'm going to use the path after my opponent attacks with Goblin Guide and potentially gives me a card. So it's kind of got a card. The ETB tap land probably doesn't do a ton over the time frame of this game. Lead on Ghostly Prison over just killing one of the Swift Spears. Because it's very easy for my opponent to just unload a bunch of burn spells with a single Swift Spear and deal a lot of damage to me. It generates, say my opponent plays 2 burn spells, this Swift Spear attack generates 3 damage. Whereas I think it's very hard for my opponent to generate more than 2 damage on their next attack through the Ghostly Prison. Which is exactly what they do with Lightning Bolt plus attack. And second prison here really shuts down the attack, especially as we're going to start picking off creatures with Porphyry Nodes. And really at this point, we just need to shut down our opponent's ability to actually end the game. And we come to another decision point this turn, which is we're going to be casting Nevermore. What do we name? I opted to name Boros Charm. So the logic there is that we're at 7, and I'm naming the card that makes it a 2 burn spell race, even though my opponent has used a Boros Charm. The alternate card, if you're going to name a 3 damage spell, you want to name a Tarkus Command because that's the one that our opponent has had the least opportunity to deploy this game. The argument against naming Boros Charm is that our opponent's just a land drop away from firing off the extra 1 damage with the Swift Spear to make it a 2 burn spell game anyway, so we should just name the thing that maximizes the number of hits. But I think it's close. We have to play some spells. We could have like Mistveil Plains to card back and taken ourselves off path, or we don't even need to do that. We could have just played both of those and left up Mistveil Plains with path, but I don't think that's going to matter a ton. And sadly, we guessed wrong with our Nevermore. We named the wrong card and died to the burn spell. Though with 3 cards in our opponent's hand, I'm skeptical, and land drops mixed. I'm skeptical they don't just have it anyways. We did not have the correct cards that game. Okay, moving the sideboarding here. Pretty simple swap. Heliod doesn't really do anything in the time frame I want it to. Luminarch Ascension, that's just a joke, right? We're not losing life against burn, so we already win the game. We don't need a card that tells us you win the game once you win the game. Prison Term is just kind of a clunky removal spell, and I cut a Porphyry Nodes. I'm not huge on the card here. It doesn't proactively stop us from taking damage in any way. And I boarded in another Greater Oromancy to protect our stuff from like a Destructive Revelry. Sanctimony, very obvious. Oblivion Ring is better. It's like the upgraded Prison Term because you can Oblivion Ring out a Eidolon of the Great Revel and not take damage, and then Story Circle because Circle of Protection Red is just a card you always want against burn. There's not a lot of complicated stuff. And your end game here is that you actually do have a hard lock. You will eventually stop them from dealing you damage and stop them from able to do literally anything. So you don't really need a dedicated win condition. Eventually you'll like Misveil Plains them or whatever. You don't need to play like a Heliod and a Luminarch Ascension here. Okay, so this is a keep to me because we get to play an early suppression field and we have removal spells to pick off creatures and protect ourselves from damage. You can also just like Runed Halo a random burn spell. And we get Goblin Guided, and there's a Leyline on top, which kind of sucks, but our goal is now just to live to Leyline. And I think, at this point, I kind of determined that I'm priced into playing Suppression Field to potentially mana screw my opponent. But we get beat down pretty quickly here. And I think I'm required to just preserve life as fast as possible. Though it is worth noting, something I was really happy about with this card is that you can just name Eidolon of the Great Revel and just get your opponent. Eidolon does damage to them, but not to you. Pretty sweet stuff. And so it's 7 life. We get to stick a Leyline of Sanctity by, Legend ruling our Nykthos. We're actually pretty close on mana, except for the Destructive Revelry that gets fired off. But without it, we'd be able to make 5 mana off this Nykthos and then pretty quickly establish 7. But we're currently at 2 life facing down, 2 cards in hand, no land drop. It's not looking good. Now we just have to kind of blind Nevermore. I chose a Tarkus command. It's really just kind of whoever's guess. You're not like the 1 mana spells aren't worth naming. I don't think I'm really getting anywhere. I'm probably dead to something, for example, that Boros Charm, but I don't think there's any specific reason to name one or the other. Your opponent's going to leave in a Tarkus command because it can pump their creatures against Leyline. It can also, it's like each opponent against Leyline. And also, you're just a mono white deck. You're going to have life gain. So I don't think there's a specific reason to guess Boros Charm or a Tarkus command there, especially because you just died to both. So, unfortunately, we lined up our Nevermore the wrong way both games, but I don't think that's like something you can really predict. I think I determined that you might need a more aggressively Hades hand against burn. You have a lot of KO cards. I just kept hands without them. Game 1, it's not my fault. Game 2, that hand may have been more borderline than I thought.